Imagine building a life with someone, thinking you know them inside and out, only to discover a betrayal so deep, so shocking, it shatters your entire world. This isn't just a story about a broken marriage, it's about uncovering a secret that was hidden in plain sight, dealing with family drama that escalated beyond belief, and ultimately, finding an unexpected path to happiness. Get ready, because this one is going to leave you speechless. I'm 28 years old, and for the last 8 years, my life revolved around my relationship with my now ex-husband. We met in our early 20s and spent 4 years dating, building what I thought was a strong and loving partnership. Eventually, we decided to get married, and for a while, everything seemed to be falling into place. We both had stable careers, shared similar values, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. But there was one painful obstacle we couldn't overcome: we struggled with infertility. Month after month, we faced disappointment, and the emotional toll started to weigh on both of us. After countless doctor visits and difficult conversations, we began to seriously consider adoption as a way to start our family. It was a challenging time, filled with hope and heartbreak. But as hard as that chapter was, it was nothing compared to the storm that was about to hit our lives. Both my husband and I worked at the same hospital, which meant our daily lives were a whirlwind of activity. Our schedules were packed with long, exhausting shifts and late nights, often leaving us with little time for ourselves or each other. Despite the chaos, I genuinely loved my job and found a sense of purpose in what I did. One of the few constants in our busy lives was our monthly tradition: on the first Saturday of every month, we'd head over to his parents' house for dinner. These dinners were a big deal. His mom would spend hours preparing an elaborate meal, complete with appetizers, main courses, and decadent desserts. She always made everyone feel welcome and cared for. Honestly, she's one of the kindest people I've ever met. His dad, on the other hand, was a different story. He was distant and rarely engaged with me, but I learned to accept it and didn't let it bother me too much. However, the real source of tension in the family wasn't his father, it was my husband's sister, and she brought a whole different kind of drama into our lives. Let's call her Samantha. Honestly, Samantha is a character all on her own. In just the past 6 months, she's bounced from job to job, 4 different positions, to be exact, and she's quit every single one. Each time, she had a new excuse, always blaming the workplace for being toxic or the people for being impossible to work with. While she avoided any real responsibility, she had no problem spending her parents' money. She was constantly showing off her latest designer clothes, handbags, and gadgets. If it was expensive or flashy, Samantha had to have it. My husband and Samantha have always shared a close bond, which I tried to understand because, after all, they're siblings. But her behavior around us was something else. Whenever my husband showed me even the smallest sign of affection, like a simple kiss on the forehead, I'd catch Samantha glaring at me with pure hostility, as if I was intruding on something that belonged to her. If I tried to have a private conversation with him, she would physically insert herself between us, interrupting and making it impossible for us to talk. I tried to talk to my husband about how uncomfortable this made me, but he always dismissed my concerns, telling me I was just being insecure and reading too much into things. A few months later, things took an unexpected turn. One morning at work, I started feeling really unwell. My head was spinning, I felt lightheaded, and a wave of exhaustion hit me out of nowhere. It was so bad that I could barely focus on my tasks. My coworker Selena, who's always been incredibly thoughtful, noticed right away and insisted that I shouldn't try to tough it out. Since my husband had taken our only car that day and I'd come in by bus, Selena offered to drive me home herself, making sure I got back safely. Once I was home, I went straight to the bathroom for a long, hot shower, hoping it would help me feel better. Afterward, I took some medicine and tried to rest, but I just couldn't settle down. The house was quiet, and after a while, boredom started to creep in. Wanting to distract myself, I decided to head out to the backyard and do a bit of gardening, something that always helped me clear my mind. I got lost in the rhythm of pulling weeds and tending to my plants, and before I realized it, hours had passed. When I finally checked the time, it was already 4 p.m. After spending a good chunk of the afternoon outside, I decided to head back inside the house. I made my way to the kitchen to wash the dirt off my hands, still feeling a bit tired but glad I'd managed to distract myself for a while. As I was drying my hands, something unusual caught my eye. Right by the front door, I noticed my husband's shoes, his favorite pair that he usually only wore when he was home. Next to them, hanging neatly on the coat rack, was Samantha's unmistakable designer jacket, the one she always bragged about and never let out of her sight. The sight of both their things instantly made me pause. I hadn't expected either of them to be home, especially since my husband had told me he'd be out with friends all day. I glanced around the living room and kitchen, but the house seemed empty and quiet. That's when I heard faint noises coming from upstairs, voices and the sound of movement. My heart started to race as I realized something wasn't right. With my heart pounding in my chest, I quietly made my way up the stairs, trying not to make a sound. As I reached the top, I could hear muffled voices and the unmistakable sound of movement coming from our bedroom. I approached the door, which was slightly ajar, and peered through the narrow gap. What I saw made my blood run cold. There, on our bed, were my husband and his sister, Samantha, tangled together in a way that was far too intimate for siblings. My husband was gently caressing her face, his hand lingering on her cheek, while Samantha had her arms wrapped around the back of his neck, pulling him closer. For a moment, I was completely paralyzed, my mind racing, trying to make sense of the scene unfolding in front of me. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity, at least 3 minutes, just watching in disbelief as my entire world shattered. Finally, my instincts kicked in. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and quickly snapped a photo and recorded a short video, needing proof of what I was witnessing. Once I had the evidence, I pushed the door open, stepped into the room, and announced my presence, my voice trembling with shock and anger. The moment I stepped into the room and made my presence known, my husband's entire demeanor changed in an instant. His face drained of all color, and he looked absolutely terrified, like he was about to faint right there on the spot. He couldn't even meet my eyes, frozen in shock and guilt. Samantha, on the other hand, reacted in a completely different way. Instead of looking ashamed or embarrassed, she simply leaned back and gave me this smug, almost triumphant smirk, as if she was proud of what she'd done or even wanted me to catch them. That look pushed me over the edge. All the anger, betrayal, and disbelief I'd been holding in came rushing out at once. I started yelling at both of them, my voice shaking with rage, demanding that they get out of my house immediately. Without saying a word, they both scrambled to gather their things and left, leaving me standing there in the ruins of what I thought was my life. But the nightmare didn't stop after I kicked them out. Later that same day, my phone started blowing up with messages from my husband's family. First, it was his mother, then his father, and soon even cousins and other extended relatives were chiming in. One after another, their texts and voicemails poured in, all echoing the same accusations. They called me jealous, irrational, and accused me of being insecure about the close bond between my husband and his sister. Some of them insisted I was overreacting to what they described as a perfectly normal sibling relationship, while others outright scolded me for causing unnecessary drama in the family. It was as if they were all reading from the same script, completely dismissing my feelings and the reality of what I had witnessed. In that moment, I realized that either they genuinely believed this kind of behavior was acceptable, or, more likely, Samantha had already gotten to them first and twisted the story to make herself look innocent and me look like the villain. His mom was the first to respond, and her message was filled with disbelief and disappointment. She wrote that she couldn't believe I would ever accuse her children of something so terrible, insisting that I must have misunderstood the situation. She seemed genuinely hurt, as if I had personally attacked the family's honor. Then came a message from his dad, and it was even harsher. He called me a horrible beach, and yes, he actually typed out beach, which almost would have been funny if the situation weren't so devastating. He accused me of being spiteful and jealous, and made it clear that, in his eyes, I was the one causing all the trouble. Out of all the messages, the only one I bothered to reply to was his dad's. I calmly asked him what exactly Samantha had told them about what happened. He replied that, according to Samantha, I had flown into a rage and screamed at her while she was simply dropping off a gift she had bought for me. I didn't even bother arguing or trying to explain myself. Instead, I attached the video and the photo I had taken earlier and sent them without another word, letting the evidence speak for itself. After I sent the video and photo, the group chat and my private messages went completely silent. Not a single person replied to me for an entire day. Still, I could see that everyone had read my messages. The app showed those little red receipts, so I knew they'd seen the evidence. The silence was almost deafening, and I could only imagine the conversations happening behind the scenes. Finally, the next day, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, and the moment I answered, I could hear her sobbing uncontrollably. Through her tears, she kept repeating that she had no idea any of this was happening, that she was completely blindsided by what I'd uncovered. She begged me not to make a public scene or tell anyone outside the family, pleading with me to keep things quiet for the sake of their reputation. At that point, I was so emotionally drained that I just agreed, not really caring any more about what she wanted. When the time finally came for our divorce proceedings, everything that had been hidden beneath the surface was dragged out into the open. In court, the full extent of the betrayal was revealed, and it was even worse than I had imagined. It turned out that the inappropriate relationship between my husband and his sister hadn't just been a recent lapse in judgment, it had actually started on the very night of our wedding and had continued, on and off, for years. The revelation left everyone in the courtroom stunned, especially his parents, who had been completely in the dark about what was really going on. The shock and disgust they felt were obvious. They were absolutely horrified by the truth. In the aftermath, they made the difficult decision to cut off all contact with both my husband and his sister, wanting nothing more to do with either of them after learning about the years of deception and betrayal. And here's the twist no one saw coming. I've actually started seeing my ex-husband's father. After the divorce, it felt as if my entire world had been flipped on its head. I was left emotionally drained, struggling to process the overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Every day felt heavy, and I found myself questioning not only my past relationship but also my own judgment and the trust one placed in others. The pain was still raw, and I wanted nothing more than to put as much distance as possible between myself and anything that reminded me of my ex-husband or his family. For weeks, I avoided all contact with them, ignoring calls, messages, and even mutual friends who tried to check in. I needed time to heal and to rediscover who I was outside of that toxic situation. But then, something unexpected happened. Out of everyone, the only person who made an effort to reach out to me was my ex-father-in-law. At first, I was surprised and even a little wary, unsure of his intentions after everything that had happened. But his message was sincere. He wanted to apologize for how he had reacted and to see how I was holding up. That small gesture marked the beginning of something I never could have anticipated. In the beginning, our conversations were short and focused mainly on practical matters. He reached out to offer a genuine apology for the way he had reacted when the truth about his children first came out. He confessed that he had been completely blindsided by the situation, and that his initial anger and harsh words had been a result of shock and confusion rather than any real animosity toward me. As we continued to exchange messages, the tone of our conversations gradually shifted. What started as polite check-ins and apologies soon evolved into longer, more meaningful discussions. We found ourselves opening up about everything: the pain and confusion of the divorce, the chaos and heartbreak caused by the family drama, and the ways we both felt let down by the people we had trusted most. We even began to share our personal disappointments and regrets, as well as our hopes and dreams for the future. Through these honest conversations, I started to see a different side of him. Beneath his sometimes gruff and reserved exterior, he was actually a deeply thoughtful and compassionate person. It became clear that he, too, was struggling to heal from the betrayal and loss, and that he was just as wounded by the events as I was. Our shared vulnerability created a bond between us that neither of us had expected. A few months after the divorce was officially finalized, he reached out and suggested that we meet up for coffee. At first, I was hesitant and unsure if it was a good idea. The thought of sitting face-to-face with my ex-father-in-law brought up a mix of emotions: nervousness, curiosity, and even a bit of anxiety. But in the end, my curiosity won out, and I agreed to meet him at a quiet little cafe not far from my apartment. When I arrived, there was an initial awkwardness between us, as if we were both unsure of how to act outside the context of family gatherings and past drama. But as we settled in and started talking, the tension began to melt away. What was meant to be a quick coffee turned into hours of conversation. We shared stories from our lives, reminisced about happier times, and even found ourselves laughing together, something I hadn't done in what felt like ages. There was a sense of comfort in being with someone who truly understood the depth of my pain, because he had experienced the same heartbreak and betrayal. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen and understood, and it was incredibly healing. As the weeks passed, our meetings became a regular part of my life. Sometimes we'd meet for coffee at our favorite cafe, lingering over warm drinks and easy conversation. Other times, we'd go out for dinner, choosing cozy restaurants where we could talk for hours without interruption. On quieter days, we'd simply take long walks together, strolling through parks or along quiet streets, sharing our thoughts and enjoying each other's company. With every meeting, our connection deepened. I found myself genuinely looking forward to seeing him, feeling a sense of excitement and comfort that I hadn't felt in a long time. He was always supportive and attentive, asking about my day, listening to my worries, and offering thoughtful advice or a reassuring word when I needed it most. He made it clear that he cared about my well-being, not just out of obligation, but because he truly wanted to see me happy. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly seen, valued, and appreciated for who I was, not just as someone's wife or daughter-in-law, but as myself. Over time, what began as a supportive friendship gradually evolved into something deeper and more intimate. Neither of us had set out with the intention of starting a romantic relationship, and in fact, we both tried to ignore the growing chemistry between us at first. But the more time we spent together, the more undeniable our feelings became. There was a warmth and understanding between us that felt completely natural, and I found myself drawn to him in ways I hadn't anticipated. We shared not only our pain and disappointments, but also our hopes, laughter, and small moments of joy. Eventually, we stopped trying to fight what was happening and allowed ourselves to embrace the connection that had formed. We were both fully aware that our relationship would be seen as unconventional, and that it might raise eyebrows or even spark more gossip and drama within the family. But after everything we had both endured, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the judgment, we realized that we deserved a chance at happiness, no matter how unexpected it might look to others. So, we chose to follow our hearts, supporting each other and finding comfort in the new life we were building together. As our relationship deepened, we knew we couldn't keep it a secret forever. Telling his ex-wife, my former mother-in-law, about us was one of the hardest things we ever had to do. We agonized over how to break the news, knowing it would be painful and likely drive an even bigger wedge between us and the rest of the family. When we finally sat down with her and explained what had happened between us, her reaction was exactly as we feared. She was shocked, hurt, and deeply disappointed. For a while, she distanced herself from both of us, and the rest of the family followed her lead, leaving us feeling even more isolated. It was a difficult period, filled with guilt and second-guessing, but in the end, we decided that our happiness had to come first, even if it meant causing pain to people we once cared about. During this turbulent period, my ex-husband became almost relentless in his attempts to contact me. Despite cutting off all contact, their obsession with my new relationship only seemed to intensify. My ex-husband was clearly struggling to accept the reality of me moving on with his father, and his confusion quickly turned into desperation. Meanwhile, his sister's behavior escalated from passive-aggressive to outright hostile, as if she couldn't stand the idea of losing control over the family narrative. Her messages and calls became more aggressive and demanding, filled with her usual self-righteous anger, insisting that I end things with her father immediately. After enduring so much pain and betrayal from both of them, their outrage honestly just made me more determined to protect my happiness. After weeks of enduring her relentless, aggressive messages and calls, each one more demanding and entitled than the last, I finally decided it was time to respond. But instead of letting her get under my skin, I chose to answer with a dose of irony that she would never see coming. I crafted a message that read, after everything that's happened, nothing brings me more joy than officially being your new mom. I hit send and waited, half expecting another outburst, but instead, there was nothing but silence. She didn't reply, didn't call, and for the first time since all the chaos began, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. That one message seemed to finally put an end to her tirades, and I realized I was truly free from their toxic drama. It was a small but satisfying victory, and it marked the beginning of a much more peaceful chapter in my life. Now, looking back a year later, I can honestly say that I am happier than I ever imagined possible. My life has completely transformed, and the peace and joy I feel every day are things I never thought I would experience again after everything I went through. Being with him feels so natural and effortless, as if we were always meant to find each other after all the chaos. We both cherish this unexpected second chance at love, grateful for the way life brought us together when we needed it most. Our relationship is built on mutual respect, understanding, and a deep appreciation for the happiness we've found in each other's company. Sometimes, it's the most unlikely connections that end up healing your heart and showing you what true love and companionship really mean. I wouldn't trade this new chapter for anything, and am finally living the life I deserve. Looking back, it's strange to say, but everything ended up working out for me in ways I never could have predicted. It's been 2 years since the divorce, and my life has completely transformed. I found a sense of peace and happiness that I never thought was possible while I was trapped in that toxic situation. My days are now filled with things that bring me joy, and I finally feel free to focus on myself and my own well-being. What began as a surprising connection during all the chaos has turned into something real, and honestly, I couldn't be happier. I just want to take a moment to give a massive thank you to all of you who have commented, shared your own stories, and offered such incredible advice on my story. I have read every single comment, and honestly, feeling that wave of support from the majority of you has meant the world to me. For those who might not see eye to eye with my choices or my current relationship, that's perfectly fine. I simply choose to ignore the negativity and continue living my happiest life. Your opinions are your own, but my happiness is mine to create. So, thank you again for being here, for reading, and for being such an engaged community. If you're curious to keep up with different journeys, to see how unexpected chapters of life continues to unfold, and to hear more of raw, real-life stories, then please make sure to hit that like button right now. Your likes truly help this content reach more people, and it let us know you're enjoying what you're seeing. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you're always the first to know when a new video drops. We are genuinely excited to continue sharing more experiences, insights, and perhaps even a few more surprising twists with all of you in the upcoming videos. Thank you for being a part of this community, and we can't wait to connect with you all again very soon.